Hello, my friends. I just had to reach out to you. I've been silent for a while, trying to, shall we say, not be incendiary and just kind of balanced. But it's hard. It's hard because what you're looking at right now is Culture Wars 2.0. And it's getting more dangerous all the time. Matter of fact, I just received a prophetic word from somebody regarding the president being like a bull that is in an arena, being stabbed and stabbed and stabbed and literally bled and exhausted by, and I hate the word because it's the guys on the horses, but they're using lances. And I don't like my name associated with cutting good people. I think I want my name piercing the darkness. So let's talk about the darkness in America. And let me tell you something right now. You're about to watch the left literally go further into insanity than they've ever gone before because the next Supreme Court seat that's up. In fact, they're going to do the same thing with Trump's pick for the Supreme Court that they did with Robert Bork. And you're going to watch the whole nation have to be subjected to the most ghastly, divisive, destructive chopping up of this man. It's going to be, the media's going to serve up a new Bork chop. That's what it's going to be. Only it's going to be the next Supreme Court justice. And I'm telling you something, Christians, we have one thing we could do. We don't have a lot of unity. We don't have a platform. We don't have a CNN or a Fox and you can't get Christian television to talk about this stuff. They get all, nervous about government because they don't want to lose donors, right? So we have to talk, but we have to pray. And, we can get 100,000 people praying. I got 800 of you right now, almost going to 1,000 people. Share this broadcast. I'm going to just lay some stuff out there. Let's start with what's, forget about the Culture War 2.0. Let's talk about what the media is doing to destroy the president. And I'll talk in part 2 tomorrow about the prophecy, about killing off the president. And I'm going to want to deal with this thing. So you guys know I've been a Trump whisperer since 2015, so it bothers me when I start to pick up on this stuff. But I want to tell you what the president got right and what he got wrong with the Putin situation. Did you see how burdened he was, kind of slumped over, walking up? This thing, he's dealing with principalities and powers. We're the people that got to cover him in prayer. It's like the weight of this Russia thing. And just for a moment, I want you to think about this. The president got hammered for not supporting his intelligence community. Well, why should he support the intelligence community? I mean, between you and me, it was Mueller and Comey and Clapper and Brennan and Strzok who actually were the deep state that are the intelligence community out to destroy him. So here's an interesting quote that Donald Trump said on Twitter. He said, "I have the utmost confidence in my intelligence people." This is the interpretation of tongues. His intelligence people he trusts. He does not trust the Obama deep state. So Business Insider had something interesting today because the FBI director, Christopher Wray, made a statement that the left will ignore, of course. And he says, forget about Russia. Russia's not a big actor. Russia only shows up in the media space around trying to divide America. In other words, whoever loses an election, Russia goes in and excites this feeling that they're victims. And so Russia's about dividing America, which, by the way, who needs Russia? I mean, when you got CNN and MSNBC, they might as well be working for the KGB. They do a better job of dividing America than Russia could possibly do. But nevertheless, Christopher Wray says this: the number one cyber threat we have is China. This goes to something like Rick Joyner's been saying for a long time. China's the one you got to keep an eye on. And I'm praying about China. The book of Revelation talks about the dragon. I'm worried about China more than I'm worried about the bear over there with Vladimir. Now, listen to this. 2017, we have the Trade Commission said that China's theft of American content, intellectual property, pirated material has resulted in $600 billion. This is as big as the trade deficit. $600 billion of ripoffs every year annually comes because of China as a cyber threat. Christopher Wray, the head of the FBI, today said that, Russia has to be dealt with, but he's far more concerned with China because China is trying to position itself in America's place as the sole dominant economic global superpower. And they have a focused plan, and all of their state artillery is focused on stealing, ripping off, penetrating, and destabilizing our economic advantage over them. So here's what I want you to catch. Christians, you've got to hear this. The mistake that the media is making in their narrow-minded obsession with destroying Donald Trump is that Russia has a strategic role to play in global affairs. And that if we do not have a relationship with Russia, which Putin wants, then we drive Russia to Iran and to China. What knuckleheads we've got running the Democratic Party and the media of the Democratic Party. Because this is what media rate basically is, the extension of the Democratic Party right now. And so they could care less about the big picture. The big picture isn't taking out Trump. The big picture is the strategic importance of Russia in relationship to America's primary agendas. And what are the primary agendas we've got? We have Syria, where the United States and Russia have to keep Iran on hold. Remember Iran, China, look at the principalities we're dealing with. And we have to provide security for Israel. That's Russia we got to work with on that. North Korea, we don't want them being a backdoor providing energy or resources under North Korea, because Trump has North Korea right now under sanctions, pushing them to the table to denuclearize and open up those beaches for big, beautiful condos, which is what Trump's trying to talk about. So we have North Korea with the nuclear issue. We've got Iran on the border of Israel in Syria. And we have this, the Ukraine, which is going to be very critical in terms of the balance of power and what's going on in Europe. Now, Trump, they're saying, is cozied up with Russia. This is absolute blatant insanity. He increased NATO's exercises in the Balkans rather than decreased it. He increased aid to the Ukraine. He increased aid to Georgia. He has allowed low-yield nuclear weapons to be part of the access of armaments that are in the NATO community. He's expanded sanction on Russian businesses, expelled 100 Russians from the United States in solidarity with England when they found the poisoning thing happen. And then you compare that to Obama, who on a hot mic actually said to Mendev, whatever that guy's name was, the president of Russia, exchanging fake roles with Putin while Putin was supposedly out of office and he's prime minister. And remember what Obama said? Tell Vladimir I'll have more flexibility after the election, meaning I'm colluding with him, and it gets caught on a hot mic. Nobody talks about that stuff. Joel Pollack has an interesting article that he put out a few days ago on Breitbart. And what he's saying is that Russia and the United States share like 90% of the world's nuclear arsenal. By the way, that World Cup that was just handed off, Russia was the one that hosted the game. Russia has strategic military bases in 4 key places that affect our foreign policy and our economic interests. Therefore, it is in the best interest of the United States to actually move forward with Putin. And I want you to think about this. Putin knows Trump is not Obama. And I'll tell you why he knows that. He knows it because he watched Trump twice use military option in Syria. Wow, that got his attention. I'm going to tell you right now, that got his attention. So he really does want to have a good relationship with Donald Trump if the American media doesn't kill him off before we get there. So what we have is Trump was leaving the NATO summit. Remember the big buzz was all over the globe? Oh, Donald Trump's he's insulting our NATO partners. I mean, that story's gone. It's like Stormy Daniels. They want to latch on to the next. It's like Leviathan. They want to grab whatever limb they can, like a crocodile, and spin cycle it to death. So, but you forget that Trump left NATO taking a strong stand for the first time as an American president. And what did he say? He said to Germany in front of the world, why are you doing a multi-billion-dollar pipeline deal with Russia, and we're, the United States, trying to get you guys to pony up to give us the money to defend you from Russia? Why are you doing business with Russia if in fact you're asking the United States to be tasked with military protection in NATO from Russia? So he calls that thing out on the gas pipeline. This is an interesting statement because it's a major geopolitical significance in terms of what Trump has done. He said, we're going to use technological edge in oil and gas production to compete in the economy of Europe with Russia. So this is another thing he's putting in the finger of the eye of Russia. He's after the economics over there. And these knuckleheads are still trying to think he's in collusion. You've got to be clear. because it's like cobwebs in the brains of people in the United States. And Christians ought to be the ones who are awake. And unfortunately, a lot of us are, I'm sorry to say, we're like God's complaint with Israel's prophets and shepherds. He said they're like dumb dogs that don't know how to bark. It's an interesting word, dumb meaning they don't speak, not stupid, but incapable of barking. We got leaders in the country talking to the Christian community who will not stand up and speak because they don't want to get involved with divisive politics. In fact, we're not dealing with divisive politics anymore. We're dealing with false prophets and false teachers on the airwaves. That's where it's going. I used to think it was Jehovah's Witnesses. Now I know it's CNN. Anyway, so I've got the transcript because I'm amazed. You have to find the transcripts to get this stuff. And you could download this. Someone said to me, "Where do you get this?" Google. That's what I did. I said, what is it that the media is not telling us? So I got the transcript, and I want to give this to you right now. Putin starts off the conference, and he says this, but you got to listen because this is powerful stuff. Nobody's quoting. Putin says, look, today Russia and the United States face a new set of challenges, and it includes a dangerous maladjustment of mechanisms for maintaining security and stability, regional crises, and the creeping threat of terrorism and transnational crimes. Now, we can only cope with those challenges if we actually close ranks and find areas to work together. Putin sounds more rational, by the way, than Chris Matthews. So he says, as major nuclear powers, we have responsibility to maintain stability in the global order. And this can be done. But we have to kind of come into a dialogue so that we're not like bumping into each other. And he said, I reminded President Trump about the suggestion to reestablish our working groups on anti-terrorism because Russia is as interested in constraining terrorism as we are for their own personal interest because they have a percentage of their population that is Islamic. So Syria, Putin says, it's important because we have a relationship with Bibi Netanyahu. We want Israel's border secure. We don't want Syria. We don't want Iran to be a factor there. It's basically what Putin is saying. He's saying North Korea. Trump, he says, we're glad the Korean Peninsula is starting to resolve itself. And to a great extent, it's possible thanks to the personal engagement of President Trump. How we forget. See, the media did not want Trump to come out of the meeting with Putin with a bump in the polls like he did with Kim Jong-un. And they were completely focused on anything he did to take him down because they're crazy. And so, Iran. We also mentioned our concern with the withdrawal of the United States from the JCPOA is what it's called. And he says, so the U.S., and we have a difference of opinion on that, but it effectively ensures the exclusively peaceful nature of Iran's nuclear program. So Trump and Putin differ on this. And this is one reason why we don't want to drive Russia into the arms of Iran and China. This is pure self-interest for America and for Christians especially. So in the Ukraine, he talks about the Ukraine thing. And so here's what I want you to catch. When President Trump, let me hit one thing. Putin then says something which is absolutely untrue. So let me nail him on this. On interference. Once again, the president mentioned the issue of so-called interference. I had to reiterate things I said several times during our personal contacts. Russian state has never interfered and is not going to interfere into internal American affairs. That's a lie. They interfere with us, we interfere with them. Then that's the part where you're going to watch Trump says something which is amazing. Now stay with me, man. We just got a few minutes here, and you got to hear this. Clearly, what Putin is saying is not true, because if it's true that they hacked into WikiLeaks, I want you to think about this for a second. What they did, hacking into the Democratic server and putting it on WikiLeaks, is probably now, I'm going to drive people crazy with this, but what they did was they surfaced actual news, which is how the Democratic Party was conspiring against Bernie Sanders, how Debbie Wasserman Schultz was rigging the thing so that Sanders supporters would never get a chance of getting Sanders in the election. What they were doing was exposing the divisions, the contemptuous way in which they talked about Catholics and even the Hispanic people within their own party. And so what Russia did was they surfaced what was actually news and then turn it around. They also, true to their nature, exploited divisions. They went to the to the Black Lives Matter potential sites, and they put anti-white stuff. They went to any place they could find where there was race tension on the right, and they planted stuff that was racial. And so they were playing both ends against the middle because their goal is to destabilize democracy in America and make it look bad. But they could not penetrate the electoral system. That requires the expertise of corrupt politicians and maybe George Soros if he can control the voting machines. But Russia can't get to that level. They're just simply putting information out there in social media. But the part that I want you to catch is that they did do that. And after Trump won, they came against Trump and excited protests. And CNN fell into the trap of actually promoting one of the protests in New York that we found out was traced back to Russian people that were planting protests in the United States against Trump, because they're into destabilizing us in the eyes of Europe and the world. By the way, we're doing a better job of destabilizing America than Russia could ever do. So what's the point? Russia wants to kill American prestige. They want to say that our democracy doesn't work. And to that end, Rachel Maddow, MSNBC, and CBS are doing far more to help that agenda than we've ever seen happen by Russia. We've got this this moment in this interview, which is kind of intriguing, when Donald Trump has to say something. And here's what he says. As President of the United States, I'm quoting him, "I cannot make decisions on foreign policy in a futile effort to appease partisan critics or the media or the Democrats who want to do nothing but resist and obstruct. And I pray that this savaging of Trump, the latest discovery that they're trying to take private phone conversations of Trump with his lawyer, Michael Cohen, regarding Stormy Daniels, and make them public. This is worse than the worst KGB kind of blackmail." So this is what the Democratic Party and the Mueller probe is up to now. Hacking into Trump's lawyer's personal phone calls. And Michael Cohen is under a squeeze play right now. Come up with something we can use against Trump, because they're out to destroy him. This isn't a probe anymore. It's an instrument to destabilize the American electoral process by pulling a man out of office you put into office. And we're going to have to rise up and say something about that. So Trump says, look, we have foreign policy issues. We can't let it be hostage to the media and the Democrats. We have to work together. So he says, in North Korea, I provided an update, Trump says, in my meeting last month with Chairman Kim on denuclearization. And we also discussed the scourge of radical Islam terrorism, still an issue. And 90% of ISIS is contained or dealt with, but we still have a percentage of ISIS out there. And last year we told Russia about a planned St. Petersburg attack and alerted them, and we worked to help avert a terrorist attack in St. Petersburg. The United States will not allow Israel or Iran to benefit from a campaign, a successful campaign against ISIS. In other words, he's going to keep Iran from capitalizing on filling a vacuum in Syria and standing in the border to attack Israel. And they're both talking about this. This is the important stuff you'd want to remember. Keep Russia engaged with our agenda. And we could do that because they have a GDP the size of Canada. Trump said it. They're a paper tiger economically. But they have military meddling issues. And so we've got to contain that threat. So then now check this out. Trump says regarding Germany, he says, I'm not sure that it's in the best interests of the United States for Germany to be doing business with Russia. This is like Trump going right for the economic issue with Russia. He says the United States now, as opposed to during the Obama era years ago, we now have the ability to extract LPG and oil. We're a contender in the world economy in terms of energy. We're not anymore over, not a pun, we're not over a barrel anymore. So Putin says this. He says, look, his response is, we have to think about the global economic instability. Let's not get into needless international market conflict regarding the price of oil. It's in our best interest to keep normal economies. That's his reply. So now, here's the question. All right, this is key. This is the most important part of what I'm saying. Trump has asked this and nobody quoted it. Do you hold, the American journalist says, do you hold Russia accountable for anything in particular? If so, what would you consider them responsible for? Now listen to this. Trump says, do you hold them accountable for anything? Trump says, yes, I do. When was that quote brought out? Never. Yes, I do. I hold both countries responsible. Now, catch this. He's the only adult in the conversation. I think the United States has been foolish. I think we've all been foolish. We should have had this dialogue a long time ago, frankly, even before I got in office. I think we're all to blame. I think the United States now has stepped forward along with Russia. We're getting together. Here's what Trump is saying. Obama messed and meddled with Benjamin Netanyahu's election in Israel. That's a fact. Hillary Clinton and the Obama White House and the George Soros money, which, by the way, comes up in this conversation in a minute, was pushing against Putin. We had a number of pro-democracy, which was really progressive left nonprofits, 527s, planted in Russia and the Ukraine in order to destabilize Putin. And this is something which nobody's talking about. We've all been playing spy versus spy. It's only because Trump won and the left is deranged. They're trying to take away the validity of his victory by implying that Russia somehow made it happen and therefore it's not a legitimate victory. This is what they always do. They did it with Bush too. They cannot stand the fact that Trump got in, so they're going to try to say meddling. And meddling is the flip side of a coin called collusion. Remember, collusion on one side, meddling on the other. That's why Trump refuses to give an inch on either one. You got to understand where Trump's coming from. The moment he says, all right, there was meddling, aha! Well, we still have the collusion thing going on. We're investigating that. But we admit now the American election was meddled with. Therefore, Trump is illegitimate. That's what the left is trying to do. Trump says, I hold both countries responsible because both countries play games with each other. And in doing so, we should be working more constructively on regional security and economic self-interest. There's the adult conversation nobody wants to have. And then Trump hits right away. He says, look, the United States has stepped forward right now because whether it's nuclear proliferation in terms of stopping, we ultimately, that's the important thing we got to work on. Iran, North Korea. He's like saying, America, keep those crazy nuclearized issues in perspective. We have to deal with that. That's your future. Anyway, then he goes on to say, hey, it was a clean campaign. It was a clean right away. You know why he's going to the campaign? Because he knows the left is trying to set him up to admit Russian collusion, Russian meddling, in order to rob the legitimacy of a brilliant campaign that won in the Electoral College by some 80 votes or 100 votes or something like that, 325 to 237 or something. So Trump says it was a clean campaign. There was zero collusion. And the main thing we discussed is if it's zero collusion, then let's talk about what we've got to do with the two largest nuclear powers in the world. Now, catch this. So there, Trump, I'm going to let the president answer. He lets the president answer a question. And then he says, we won the Electoral College, 306 to 223, I believe. It was a well-fought battle. You see, he's trying to position himself against this manipulation of meddling. Now, here's what's really crazy about this. When the questions come about the evidence of collusion, I actually have I wonder if I can show it to you. There's a moment there where Putin is being asked about the collusion, and he laughs. And of course, everyone in the American audience is like horrified. He laughs because it's such a stupid question. Can you imagine a former KGB head, being asked, do you have dirt on the United States? Do you have information on Donald Trump and his family that you're using against him? And he laughs because only an idiotic journalist would think that. What do you think Putin's going to say? Oh, yeah, got me. I guess I should turn in the iPhone now. And so, here, let me see if I can do this for you. You got to see this. I'm going to just hold on here, people. I got to get this for you. All right, here we go. I don't know if I'm going to turn my volume up. I don't even know I hope you can hear me on this thing. All right, you see this? Can you guys see that? I hope you can see it. I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to flip it around. Okay, here we go. Let's watch this.
Sir, does the Russian government have any compromising material on President Trump or his family?
Trump's like, oh my gosh. Watch Putin. Yeah, because it's a dumb question. So he goes on to answer. I'm going to give you the answer here. I want you to hear this. He goes, he didn't even know Trump was not a candidate during the so-called urinating on the bed that Obama slept in story. Only, and of course, Putin goes on and says, I know something about these dossiers. Of course he does. He's a KGB guy. He's saying Trump was a businessman. He wasn't even running back then. Why in the world would we be spying on him? Oh. You guys get what I'm talking about? All right. Well, anyway, here we go. So here's the deal, Lucille. What we have to do is we have to be able to catch the menace of what's happening in terms of the media meltdown. Because if we don't deal with this thing, and I'm telling you, Trump is being so harassed by this stuff. He's being so harassed that that I think without intercession, it's actually wearing him down. But like Soros, I got to tell you the Soros quote, because what I'm going to show you here, I'm going to flip around. I got my screen right here. This is the transcript. He goes on and he talks about the how the United States has its own actors that act independently, and he goes on and he brings up the thing. Let me see here. We got the Hillary Clinton. He's upset because there's $400 million in like some contribution that was made to Hillary Clinton. Here's Putin bashing Clinton with money business that was going on that nobody's talking about. And then I thought it was kind of interesting because he brings up, this is the whole transcript, you can get this thing. Putin goes, after all, I was an intelligence officer myself, and I know how dossiers are made up. He said, look, you don't have a single piece of evidence on this. He talks about the Conquer company. Mueller said he was gonna take over, he was gonna charge this one company.
Colleague, let me tell you this.
There's Putin over here. Hold on, Vladimir. And so the Concord company is the company that Mueller indicted, and they showed up in court and they said, make your case. And Mueller didn't have a case, which is embarrassing. So he goes on with the Russian dossier. And now to the compromising material. Yeah, I did hear those rumors that were allegedly collected material on Trump when he was visiting. Listen, distinguished comrade, let me tell you this. When Trump was in Moscow back then, I didn't even know he was in Moscow because although I treat him with great respect, he was a private citizen. Listen, we have an economic forum that goes on here with 500 big, powerful, high-ranking, high-level American businessmen. We don't have the ability to follow every single businessman that comes into Russia. A little different though, right? If you're talking about, as a candidate versus Trump as a businessman, when this Russian dossier, the dossier supposedly reveals the urinating out of it. What kind of perverse brain comes up with that story? I'll tell you what kind of perverse brain comes up with. The same one that goes after Stormy Daniels 24/7, and now is going after Trump to say that he has disgraced himself by kowtowing to Putin and denying his own intelligence community. But remember what I said. He has a right to question the intelligence community. They're the ones behind the sabotage that is trying to destroy him. But I'll find that quote on Soros because it's fascinating where Putin just goes out and says, hey, man, you guys got George Soros. And like he's well known in Europe for being somebody who's constantly trying to destabilize governments over here. But we don't assume that he's representing the American government. What he's saying is we got people here that can easily be doing their job against the United States. I don't even have to have them in my department. We got people here that do it because we don't stop. We don't authorize it. But it goes on, and it can go on because it's not against their own interests. They like to see the American democracy destabilized. Although I don't believe that. I think Putin knows exactly what he's doing. So we're going to have to pray, folks. I'm telling you, this vision, this lady had, the prophetess, I got to find her name, about Trump being like a bull that's being stabbed in the arena, and that he's bleeding, and then there was one through the heart. Oh, here we go. I'll get that to you a little bit later. Here's the Soros quote. You have a lot of individuals in the United States. Take George Soros, for instance, with multi-billion-dollar capitals, but it doesn't make him his position, his posture, the posture of the United States. In other words, the fact that Georgie is trying to do all this political stuff in the United States doesn't make him the agent of the United States. And Putin says, we probably have a lot of people doing stuff against you guys, and doesn't necessarily mean they represent my interests. What I'm going to tell you is Russia has been a bad actor, and Russia will clean up its act because they really don't want to provoke Trump. But Trump is getting so beat up. To see the weight on him when he was going there, just his shoulders slumped over. And I swear, the church is like so delinquent in terms of standing up for this man and standing together and praying. And we have got to come together. Now, tomorrow, I'm going to expose the disgraceful work of the New York Times and what they're doing to target Christians, the National Prayer Breakfast in Washington, and imply that we, in the prayer breakfast that I've attended, are somehow colluding with Russia. We work with every nation at a prayer breakfast. Those dimwits. That's what the gospel is. It goes to every nation. It's like saying Billy Graham is working with communists because he preached in Beijing and North Korea. How dense can you get? I got a low network connection because I'm out of the United States. I'll be checking in with you. Thank you for standing with me. Thank you for listening to this broadcast. You got to share it, because between you and me, it isn't going to be social media favored right now that I'm saying these things. So unless you share it, it's going to reach like, the equivalent of a small group. Let's share this broadcast. Please, please, please. Catch the passion, catch the zeal, catch the clarity, catch the big picture, because you're not going to hear this stuff coming from the low IQ news team. I tell you what they are. They're not just fake news. They're actually mad cow media. But I'm losing my connection here, so I got to go. I'll talk to you guys later. Mwah. Bye-bye.
Hi, I'm Lance Wallnau, but you already know that. Did you know that you can subscribe, however? You just push that button right there or over there and ding. Now we're connected. Look forward to seeing you soon.